was the summer of 2014, and for my son's bar mitzvah present, just like many Jewish parents, we wanted him to bond with the Holy Land. Oh, it worked perhaps too well. My husband had stayed back at the hotel, and our friends, my son and I, had just stopped in a pharmacy.
Run to the bomb shelter, sweetie. Please hurry. I didn't hear the sirens at first, but the Israelis did. They're used to hearing these things. We ran to the back of the storeroom. It was a 12-foot by 24-foot windowless bomb shelter. My heart's pounding. Boom! Boom! I hear it and feel the percussion of the exploding bombs. I'm trying not to get sick. I look at my 13-year-old son and I think I'll never forgive myself if something happens to him.
That's an excerpt from a speech I gave to the Orange County Jewish Bar Association. It was the first, but not the last time we had to run to a bomb shelter. Our adventure and my transformation is also the subject of my book, Blasted from Complacency, A Journey from Terror to Transformation in Israel. There is no chapter in a parenting book on what to do when a war starts and you're on a family vacation. Think touring extraordinary and sacred sites mixed with cowering in bomb shelters. I'm still trying to get over the Jewish guilt of taking my son to war for his bar mitzvah present. The impact of being human targets helped me understand the plight of Israelis living like this, and it also made me want to work on peace. How Israel is often described on the news is not what I'd seen with my own eyes. And I felt Palestinian parents also preferred their children playing safely in their backyards. The missiles exploded just near enough to blow apart my world as I knew it, forever changing me. And you'd never recognize my life today with what it was like then. I believe I found my life's purpose. Hello, I'm Penny St., and I'm the host of Peace with Penny. These are very difficult days as the war is almost a month long. Besides, how do you maintain a peace vodcast of Israelis and Palestinians when a disastrous war is raging? It's because these organizations work with the commitment of their hearts. We first spoke with Road to Recovery in February, aptly on Valentine's Day, because it's a story of humanity and love, rare commodities in these times. Yet, the road to recovery continues to be a bright ray of sunshine. We'll find out what is happening with their incredible work during the war. We will be speaking with Shahar Steiff, a volunteer with the Road to Recovery. At the Road to Recovery, they transport Palestinian patients to and from border crossings for treatment in Israeli hospitals. Palestinians get the patients and their parents to their border, and from their border, Israelis transport them to Israeli hospitals for treatment. So now that there is the war going on, we'll find out what the status is of their amazing work. Are they still able to function? Are there still volunteers, or are they fighting the war or willing to continue? The journey from the border crossing is virtually impossible for the hundreds of parents of sick children due to both expense as well as logistical complexity. Parents are left completely helpless in the face of their child's illness. The Palestinian Authority finances the hospital treatment, but getting to and from the hospital remains a huge and often insurmountable barrier. Road to Recovery fills in this gap, and along the way, the humanitarian effort and the friendships that form move peace forward. In addition to the 1,200 volunteers transporting Palestinian patients to hospitals all over Israel, well, that was how many they had before the war, Road to Recovery assists those with limited means in the acquisition of specialized outpatient medical equipment. They also organize special rehabilitation and retreat days for Palestinian patients and their families in Israeli recreation destinations. Shahar Steiff is one of the Jewish Israeli volunteer drivers. He is 61 years old, born and raised in Israel, and his life reflects the troubled history of Israel, both of determined success and tragedy. We'll touch on both his volunteer work and his personal story. What's it like growing up in a country where repeatedly throughout your life you've had to wonder if tomorrow you or your family will be killed? When what may be inevitable, it hits close to home within your family. What makes you go on, even choose to help what others around you call your enemy? We'll hear about how the war has personally impacted him. Both his son and his fiancée were scheduled to be married last Friday and instead are fighting the war. And we'll hear much more difficult news. Shahar is a very accomplished business owner in the world of technology. He was educated at the MIT Sloan School of Management, attended the executive program of blockchain technologies, business innovation and application in 2019, and attended the Technion Israel Institute of Technology. Today, he works at a telecom company. He has traveled the world for business, but during COVID 3 years ago, it provided an unexpected opportunity, time. His efforts exemplify the Jewish tradition of tikkun olam, God's entreaty to repair the world. He put his bit of extra time into volunteering to help transport Palestinian children for their medical needs at Israeli hospitals. First, we'll discuss a little about Shahar's personal involvement in the road to recovery, and then get into what's been happening since the war began. So let's get started. Welcome, Shahar.
Hello.
Hello. Shahar, how would you describe road to recovery?
You mentioned the word tikkun olam, fixing the world, and it's kind of a way, I guess, to make little amends where possible. The fact is that ailment does not consider war or peace. When people get sick, they need help, regardless of what happens around, what's happening around.
Sure.
And as a result, we're here to offer a hand for help and to help I guess, the most needful people. If we look at the various people populating the greater Israel and West Bank and Gaza, the Palestinians are probably the most deprived population. And the sick people among the Palestinians are the most deprived within the deprived. And if you look at Gaza, they are even further down the list. Gazans are basically even lower on the list within the Palestinians themselves. So offering a hand for help for Palestinian patients, for me, is sort of a moral obligation, which is done regardless of the external situation, whether it's war or peace. It just needs to be done. This needs to be done, and if there's no one else, then I will be there.
Fantastic. How did the road to recovery get started?
Yuval Roth has lost his brother in a terrorist attack. His brother was kidnapped and murdered by the Islamic militants in Gaza. And Yuval, I think, made the choice. Instead of retaliation and hatred, the revenge, his approach was to try and figure out a way to stop people from doing the wrong thing, not by punishment, but actually by motivating them to do the good thing, and reducing the tension, reducing the gap between Israelis and Palestinians is probably the best way for us to be able to reduce the tension and reduce the motivation for further terror attacks. Has that worked or not? That's open to debate. But at least I think Yuval felt he was doing the right thing.
It certainly has worked in pockets. There's so many different peace organizations where it has worked and is continuing to work. So that's good news.
Yeah, obviously this is the case. And initially, Yuval did not start the road to recovery. He actually joined the Forum of Bereaved Families. That was the beginning.
Yes.
And through that, he came to know Palestinian people, and one of them once said, my brother is suffering a certain ailment which cannot be cured locally in Gaza, and he has received permission to get treatment in a hospital in Israel, but he had trouble with transportation from the border to the Israeli hospital. And Yuval started taking him on a personal level, simply driving in his car. And the rumor spread around, and more people started getting approval for treatment in Israel. And suddenly Yuval and his immediate family were not enough, and that's when he started the group. And he started picking up volunteers, and the numbers kept growing. We've been around for, I think, 13 years now almost. The numbers kept growing, and by now we have 1,200 volunteers who drive pretty much on a daily basis. And we do the simple thing of transporting the patients, typically with an accompanying person, from the border crossing, be that in Gaza or in the West Bank, to the nearest Israeli, or not necessarily the nearest, to the chosen Israeli hospital where the treatment is given.
How did you get involved with driving for Road to Recovery?
So as you mentioned earlier, COVID-19 changed I would say my priorities, but I travel less than I traveled before. So I have more control of my time and my availability. And since I'm a work from home kind of person, I'm able to push my schedule around, and making a ride either early in the morning or something during the afternoon is not impossible as it used to be before, and I can make a commitment ahead of time. So I figured out this is my time to volunteer. Initially when I contacted the Road to Recovery, they said, I live kind of in the northern part of Israel, Haifa Bay area, and they said, we have enough volunteers on those routes, on the northern routes, so we do not need help at the moment, but stay tuned. And when COVID hit, many of the retired volunteers stopped driving because they were afraid of their health, and suddenly there was a need, and that's when I joined in and started driving. And basically, I don't think I've missed a week since. Actually, I've missed 2 weeks when I was overseas, but beyond that, there hasn't been a single week when I haven't driven at least once.
So how are Israelis and Arabs involved both as the medical team and as the patient? How are the Israelis and Arabs involved both as medical teams and as the patients? I know that you're taking Palestinian kids, but what's going on with regarding the teams, the medical teams?
Okay, well, an interesting thing, of course, would be that a lot of the personnel in Israeli hospitals are actually Israeli Arabs. Some professions would not accept Israeli Arabs, specifically all the security firms, etc. So many Arabs simply join medical school either as doctors or as nurses. So in certain wards in the hospital, more than half the staff is actually Arab. And the point is, the Arabs by themselves are about 25% of the population of Israel. If you look at the north part of Israel, they're closer to 50%, maybe even more. Center of Israel, maybe there's a larger Jewish majority. So of course, their command of Hebrew is almost perfect. They speak very good English. And of course, they have their mother tongue is Arabic, which helps them a lot in treating all patients from all backgrounds. And the fact is that the Palestinian patients, when they arrive to treatment in Israel, they pretty much feel at home, because there's always an Arabic-speaking staff member, be that a doctor or a nurse, around to help them or help translate in case. I'm just specifically, I'm a bit more involved with patients of the pediatric nephrology ward in Haifa, in Amman. So one of the 3 doctors is Arabic. I think more than half the nurses are Arabic. So they speak Arabic as their mother tongue. So when the Palestinian kids arrive, they don't even need to learn Hebrew. Some of the kids have been in treatment for years, like 8-9 years already. We call them the ward supervisor or the ward manager, because they've been there longer than most of the staff.
Oh my!
And I kept asking myself, why don't they speak Hebrew? How comes they don't speak Hebrew after so long? And then I figured out they don't need Hebrew. At least half, if not more, of the staff at the ward speaks Arabic anyway, so they get around with Arabic. They do not really need the Hebrew language skills, as interesting as it may be.
These kids are suffering serious diseases. What do you see?
The nephrology ward would typically be kidney issues. These are mostly genetic. They're mostly genetic and some pathogenic genes that pass through the family.
Can you talk about that? Because that's a whole issue that I'm sure a lot of people here aren't familiar with.
Okay. Well, the issue is that I don't know how many of you are of the audience are familiar with genetics, but basically when 2 parents are carriers of a pathogenic gene, they have a chance of 1 in 4 of having a healthy child, 2 in 4 of having a carrier that is non-symptomatic, and 1 in 4 a chance of having a child which is symptomatic. And in most cases, when it's called pathogenic, that means without treatment, that child is destined for death. I'm talking about death within days or weeks after birth.
Horrible. And why is it so prevalent? Why is it so prevalent?
This is the issue. When I said when both parents are carriers, and interfamily marriage is quite common generally in the Palestinian society, but not only. And as a result, there is a higher chance. I mean, if the gene runs in the family, there is a higher chance of a carrier to get married to a cousin or a distant cousin, which is also a carrier, and then the result will be the continuation of the gene. Or again, the pathogenic symptomatic children typically survive anywhere between 2 weeks to 15, 16 years of age. And of course, and the carriers, they live the normal life, basically because they're just carriers, they're non-symptomatic, they don't have any symptom. So you know, one of the children I'm driving on a regular basis is symptomatic. And he has been in and out of hospital, well, not in and out, he's been in hospital since he was, I think, 3 weeks old or so.
Is that Mahmoud?
His sister was also symptomatic, and she was a year older than him, and both children went to the hospital on a daily basis, basically like 5 days a week. And eventually she died from a complication, not from, I mean, the treatment was keeping her alive, but the point is that, you know, they do blood work on your body, and they you know, needles and stuff, and all you need is just you know, one bug to come through, and it's blood infection, which typically leads to death. Which is what happened, you know, after a year and a half, she passed away. But her brother, little Mahmoud, is now celebrating.
That's who I thought you meant.
He celebrated his 10th birthday just about a week ago. That's his 9th birthday, but on his 10th birthday, it was just a week ago. And he's a survivor. I mean, he is.
So he's 9 years old.
Well, in the picture, he's 9 years old now. This picture is about a year old.
But he's
he
so
just
small.
His 10th birthday about last week, and is you know, is typically a happy boy, but physically in terrible condition. I mean, is size of like a 2-3 years old toddler, even though he's 10 years old. His brain is perfect. I mean, he understands, he speaks, he understands, but he cannot walk. He lies on his back all the time, and physically is not growing. And he gets this blood work, you know, the dialysis 5 days a week. Actually, very, very difficult. But you know what? At least with him, there is some good news, because about a year ago, I think it was more than a year ago, his mother approached me and asked me if there's any way I can help them raise money for a treatment that is called embryo screening, or medical term is PDG IVF. Basically, it's IVF, but you screen the embryos and you choose a healthy one. And apparently they just couldn't afford it themselves. So you know, a group of volunteers raised the money and gave it to the family, and they did the IVF with a healthy boy. So the family now, after 5 problematic pregnancies, I mean, first girl passed away. Second one is Mahmoud, which is very sick. Third one was a girl, which is a carrier, non-symptomatic carrier. She's a healthy girl now, I think in 2nd or 3rd grade. And then two more pregnancies, which were terminated because they understood that the fetus is also pathogenic. So now they gave birth to a healthy baby boy. So about 6 months ago, 5-6 months ago, they gave birth to a healthy baby boy, which is growing nicely, and by now he's 6 months old and is already almost as big as his big brother.
Jiminy crickets. Wow.
So interesting. And he actually, Mahmoud, the sick boy, got the honor of naming his young brother, and he chose a very meaningful name. He gave him the name Sanad, which in Arabic, Sanad means like a support beam or a pillar, in the house, a major pillar that holds the house together. I think if you think of a 10-year-old boy giving such an interesting name or such a meaningful name, that shows about his character. He's a real survivor and a cute boy, and you can chat with him a bit. He does speak a bit of Hebrew. He understands perfectly, but doesn't speak that much.
Right.
And then again, I mean, I'm scheduled to take him this coming Sunday. I look forward to meeting him because I haven't seen him for about 3 or 4 weeks.
Oh, wonderful. And Kasem's been with you for a long time, the 11-year-old. How's he doing?
Kasem, yes, Kasem is another kidney patient. In his case, this is not a genetic issue. This is an issue he had. He developed some sort of an autoimmune syndrome, which basically destroyed his kidneys, and he got a kidney transplant from his mother.
Wow.
And that happened about a year and a half ago.
Was that done in Israel or in?
It was done in Israel, in the Rambam hospital. Yes, the operation was made in Israel. It's actually 2 operations. First, they extract the kidney from the mother, then they transplant it to her son. And keep in mind, she's a single mother. Her husband passed away when she was pregnant with Kasem, basically. So he is her 5th and last child. She was struggling, both financially and emotionally, because she was very worried. If something goes wrong to her, she leaves 5 orphans behind. In addition to that, she couldn't work for quite a while, and she was the only one supporting the household. And her old son, which was somehow able to help them by work, he was accompanying them in the hospital during the operation. And sometimes kidney transplants go very smooth, and a month later, the child goes home healthy and back to normal. With Kasem, things were not that smooth. It took almost a year until the kidney really functioned all by itself. And he still had to go to hospital and receive all sorts of treatments, plasmapheresis for those who are interested in the actual medical term, that basically replacing the white cells from his blood with artificial ones or healthy ones, because his body was still producing antibodies that were fighting his own kidneys. It was really just like about 2 or 3 weeks ago when it was finally released. Gradually they reduced the number of treatments and figured out that his blood test and urine tests were basically normal or within norm, and decided that he can now stop the treatment. He still needs to take oral medicines, but oral medicines that do not require traveling to the hospital. So now basically he's down to a monthly routine checkup. No more treatment.
Wow.
Which means he can go back to school. His mother can go back to work. So I'm happy to say that Kasem is now a healthy boy. He's back to school and
fabulous. I know. I wanted to show. There's a clip. Obviously, when you have these kids who are there all the time, people, the nurses, everyone, the volunteers, they bond with them. And
of course,
there is a wonderful of him celebrating his birthday in the hospital.
Yeah, we gave a nice birthday party in the ward, and this is Kasem. This is the bicycle which he received for his 10th birthday about a year ago. So this is Dr. Shirley. Then after that, I took him to a jamboree, and he was doing ice rink skating and climbing rocks and all that stuff. He was very happy. He was elated on that day. Yes. Then there's when I went swimming.
يلا
Mark Spitz. Seven Olympic medals. 7.
So over all this time together, you've really become dear friends.
Yes, actually we did. Yes. We really are. We really are dear friends. I mean, is dear to me. You know, like a grandchild, pretty much like a grandson.
Jenin is a refugee camp that has many terrorists living there. Do you hear about the reactions of their families and friends to the fact that you're driving their kids to Israeli hospitals, or do they have to keep it secret?
First, let's put things in context. There is a refugee camp in Jenin, but Jenin itself is a big city. There is Jenin city, which is just a Palestinian city. There are many villages around it, which are considered, let's call it the Jenin metropolitan area, if we can speak it, or the greater Jenin. And there is the Jenin camp. His family actually comes from the camp. Mahmoud, the other child, he lives in a nearby village, so no issues there. Qassem's family originally comes from the camp. They're originally before 1948, they lived in a village about 10 kilometers north of Jenin. And the family moved out of the camp about, I think, more than 10 years ago, because they wanted a better housing, better life. And they even moved again about 6 months ago into an apartment even further away from the camp, because the camp is indeed swarming with Islamic with extremists. And it is also considered sort of a safe haven for Islamic extremists from all over the West Bank. If they need to flee somewhere, they flee to the Jenin camp. And as a result, Israel operates in the camp radically. And of course, now during the war, this becomes more frequently than sporadically. Almost every night or every second night, there is Israeli activity in the camp where they're trying to find wanted people. As a result, night after night, they wake up very early, hardly find any sleep because of Israeli military activity. Even though the activity is in the camp, the whole city is paralyzed during that night, and typically also the following day, specifically if that was like a major operation. And interestingly enough, Sunday night this week.
Yeah, you showed me some scary texts from his mom.
Yes, and the point was that an Israeli fighter jet, which flew above my home, woke me up at around 3:30. That jet was trying to figure out maybe intercept a Hezbollah rocket or drone or something. But you know, the noise of the afterburner woke me up at around 3:30. So I clicked my phone to see what's happening, to read the recent news, and then I saw that there was some things happening in Jenin. So I texted Qassem's mother, asking her if everything is okay. She, it's 3:30 a.m. in the morning. That's not typically a time to text someone, but I guess if there's something happening, she must be aware. And she replied immediately, said, very problematic. Apparently, her oldest son, he operates a coffee shop around the center of town, and it was around 1 a.m. He was still at the shop, and when the whole carnage started, and he couldn't go back home because the military was everywhere. The best thing to do would be to hear from the street. So he ran and took refuge in the Ibn Sina hospital, which is a small hospital in the center of Jenin, assuming that if there is any air bombing, they would spare the hospital, which is the case. But still, the hospital was surrounded. I guess they were looking for the people, and they figured out maybe the wanted people are actually in the hospital. Eventually, they found them elsewhere, but he was hiding in the hospital. Fortunately, he had his phone with him, so he was able to tell his mother that he was okay. I also texted him and told him to stay safe. And it was only around 8 a.m. in the morning that he returned home. When IDF pulled out, that he was able to return home. So to an extent, she was feeling for me because of the events in my area, and she was worried about my son, which was being drafted to reserves.
Yes,
and I was worried about
his fiance too. Oh my gosh.
of like people from both sides of the border are worried about each other. But I guess this is probably not the typical case with each and every volunteer and each and every patient. I think really the issue was that the relations between myself and Qasim's family specifically, but I think also Mahmoud's family, go beyond the typical taxi driver and patient relations. So we really
I'll
do.
tell you, actually, with all the different peace groups that I talk to and things happen, even the kids, the high school kids, like in Hands of Peace, the last summer they went home and there were things happening and they were calling each other, the kids, are you okay? Are you okay? So it does happen. It's amazing how meeting the other so healing really is.
We had a group chat, or actually a group
Mhm.
Zoom call between the volunteers
Mm.
last Saturday.
Mhm.
And many volunteers expressed some sort of disappointment from the Palestinian side, for the Palestinian counterparts, for not showing sympathy to what happened in October 7th.
Right. And we hear about
And
that quite a lot.
yeah, and I told them, my response there was, do we express sympathy to them for the 7,000 lives lost in Gaza? And without taking the point of who is right and who is wrong, without
Mhm.
pointing a finger of they started or we started or whoever it is, it's
Mhm.
a never-ending finger pointing exercise. But I said, everyone looks at their own team or at their own group. As much as we can dismiss those 6,000 fatalities in Gaza as collateral damage, they can dismiss our 1,500 deaths as collateral damage. I'm not justifying one or the other. I'm just saying if you try to look at things from the other side's eyes, things maybe fall into place. The pieces fall into place. But again, if you do know the other person on a personal level,
Yeah.
and it's not just an occasional drive when it's the first and maybe last time you've seen this person because you happen to be volunteering for this ride and random driver, random patient. What is
Mhm.
the chance of you meeting again?
Yeah.
Then I guess indeed maybe you wouldn't think of calling and asking, hey, how are you doing?
Yeah.
What happened to you? How are things? Is anyone in your family that got hurt?
Yeah.
So I was driving a couple of patients about 2 weeks ago. After October 7th,
Mhm.
4 men, two patients. They're actually grown-ups. Well, one of them was like I think about 21 years old. The other one was 50
Mhm.
something, and an accompanied person with each. In my small car, which is, it's a big car, but it's quite cramped when 5 adults are
Yeah.
trying to sleep.
Sure.
One of them was actually speaking relatively good Hebrew,
Mhm.
and I told him, me personally, on October 7th, I've lost an uncle of once removed. Was
Right.
murdered at his home, 83 years old. An aunt twice removed, which was taken hostage alive, then found dead. So she must have been executed after being taken hostage. She was actually filmed by Hamas walking
Mm.
in the kibbutz Be'eri, and then her body
Oh.
was and they actually took also her son, her daughter-in-law, and granddaughter. They snatched them as well. And of those, her son and his baby daughter were able to miraculously escape, some sort of a heroic escape, and came back to Israel. And her daughter and daughter-in-law are probably held captive with Hamas. We don't even know if they are alive or not. We do know that they were taken, but there's no sign of life. They haven't seen the Red Cross. So I told them, the story. Suddenly, he started apologizing. This is not us. I told him, listen, I know. I don't blame you. I blame Hamas. You're not Hamas.
Mhm.
I understand. In Gaza there are 2 million people, 2 million Palestinians. Let's say 50,000 of them are Hamasniks. The rest are Gazans. I guess they don't
Mhm.
really have a chance. Hamas was imposed on them in the greater sense of the word. Yes, they did elect Hamas in the elections, but I don't think they elected Hamas as a terror organization. They elected them as an Islamist party, and it turned out to be a monster. So I don't blame the Gazans for Hamas. I blame Hamas for Hamas.
Yeah.
And then the other day, I think it was yesterday, I drove a patient, again, a couple of patients from Shiva Hospital.
Mm.
And again, one of them was speaking good Hebrew, and
Mhm.
we both discussed what's going to happen.
Mm.
And I asked him, do you think there is a chance that there would be a non-Islamic regime taking over control in Gaza? I told them, assume Israel has been able to wipe out Hamas out. I don't know how much lives are going to be lost for that, but assume we're able to eradicate Hamas. Do you think there is a chance for a non-Islamic and non-militant regime to take over? He was doubtful. He said when Hamas took over, they took over from the PLO, and they actually threw the PLO people from the top of the roof. Simple as that. They just threw them out. They did not throw them out of West Bank. Out to the West Bank. They just threw them from the top of the building to the street, physically eliminated. And then I asked him, you live near Jenin, and I know your village is quiet, but is there any chance that people around Jenin will kick out those fanatics in the refugee camp? Because even in the refugee camp, which is a can of worms, only a few are the actual militants. The rest are people who just cannot afford any other housing. Are you in a position? Are you able to kick those nasty people out? And he looked at me, smiled, and said, not a chance. No one will raise a finger against Hamas, even though PLO is in charge of the West Bank. No one in the West Bank no Palestinian will raise a finger or an arm on Hamas, because they're afraid they will be the next to be thrown from the top.
Yeah.
So
and they probably would be too.
Yeah. So I told you, basically, Israel is doing the dirty work for Abu Mazen, for Fatah, by keeping Hamas and Islamic Jihad quiet in the West Bank.
Yeah.
But we do not do that in Gaza, and as a result, Gaza has become a monstrous place where people do those monstrous things they did on October 7th, which are really unfathomable.
Yeah.
I mean, put aside my own personal story, the pictures and stories coming from there are horrible.
Yeah, totally agree with you on that. And unfortunately, you also had your time here. You are. Yeah. Can you describe? You're in the bomb shelter from the missiles, obviously.
Yeah. So luckily, I live in a relatively quiet area. I mean, I'm too far from Gaza for the Gazan rockets to reach my place. I mean, their long-range rockets I'm within range of the real long-range rockets, which I think are about 250 kilometers, but at least a launch clusters of those. So they shoot them one by one, and if it's one by one, it's easy for the Israeli rockets to intercept them and shoot them on the way. So none of them has actually made a hit. But we're still in range, and whenever they shoot such a rocket, we get an alert, and we have to run to the bomb shelter. A picture from let's call it the neighborhood bomb shelter.
Yeah. So do you have a bomb shelter at all in your own home, or you have to go to this neighborhood?
All new homes in Israel now must have a bomb shelter. You cannot live in a home you're not allowed to build a new home without a bomb shelter. But the neighborhood I live at is relatively old, so many of the houses do not, including our own home. So our next door neighbor does have a bomb shelter. So us and our immediate neighbors, those are the three cute kids there. We all run to that neighbor. Apparently, it's not even in the picture. But we all run to her bomb shelter whenever.
You really get to know your neighbors, that's for sure.
Yeah, well, we live in a kibbutz, so we know our neighbors. So and they know us, and it's quite easy actually. But whenever there's a siren, there's a raid, we all run to her bomb shelter and stay there. And she's actually quite happy because she lives alone, and she's happy to have someone with her in those stressful moments. So we spend time. We already have some children's books and some toys ready to take with us whenever we run there, so the next door neighbors' kids have something to do when spending the time there.
So what's this been like for you during this war now?
It's stressful for various reasons. Of course, first, there's the worry for our son, which is stationed at the border. He's in the Lebanese border. So he does not go into Gaza, and the likelihood of him going into Lebanon is very, very low. It's primarily protecting the border from possible penetration from Lebanon into Israel.
Yeah, they think Hezbollah is gonna get more involved? I know that they've been doing some stuff,
That's
but
the question. No,
the question of the hour, if you knew the answer, you'd
exactly.
make a bet.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
Hezbollah is increasing the level of their attacks on a daily basis, basically.
Right.
Every day they take it a notch up, but it hasn't yet reached a point where Israel launches a counterattack, a major counterattack. Because if we do, then let's use fault words. All hell breaks loose.
Yeah.
Because
Do you know where that line is? What Israel does Israel ever say what that line is?
that line would probably be when Hezbollah aims at civilian targets in Israel. So
Isn't
far,
that what they're doing with the missiles?
well, they hide. Well, their claim is that the few rockets which are shot towards civilian population are not shot by Hezbollah, but actually they are shot by Hamas and Islamic Jihad militants, which are based in Lebanon. So they say it's not Hezbollah.
Mm.
And if that's the case, then Israel will not retaliate to Hezbollah. They will only hit the sources of the launchers. And the clashes with Hezbollah are primarily at this moment. Hezbollah is keeping very straight in only shooting military targets on the side. So it's typically barracks which are really close to the border. If and when Hezbollah decides to start shooting civilian areas, civilian locations, and God forbid there are fatalities, I guess that's when Israel will retaliate. And when that happens, we will see a rainfall of rockets. And in that case, I'm certainly within range.
Right.
Well, we have about 60 to 90 seconds time from siren until we have to be locked up in that bomb shelter, and we've measured times. We're okay. We're good.
Man, my feet couldn't carry me fast enough as far as I was concerned when I went through it. Oh.
Well, we've already made an arrangement with the neighbors, that when I run, I'll come and I take one of their kids because they have to carry 3 kids together, and there are only 2 parents. So I'll take one of their kids with me, and we already know that we are well prepared. And we've measured the time, and we expect to make it. And if need be, there's there's an underground bomb shelter about 2 minutes away. So if things get worse, we can go and stay there for a while. But as you mentioned, it's trying to keep a normal life in a very unpredictable situation.
What's happening at Road to Recovery? Sorry.
Okay, interesting enough. So the Road to Recovery continues operation because, as I mentioned in the opening of my opening statement, ailments do not care about war. People need medical treatment. They need medical treatment, and the medical treatment does not wait for the war to end.
Yeah.
One thing, of course, Gaza is now closed. There is no comes in and out of Gaza. So the patients out of Gaza cannot get treatment. They are getting whatever treatment they're able to get within Gaza itself, and I hope they all survive the war and live to see the other day and are able to resume their treatment in Israel. I can only hope. I know some of them, and because I've been taking them back and forth, speaking with them, I can only hope that they will survive. The West Bank patients keep going, but again, the most border crossings have been shut down temporarily because no Palestinian workers are allowed to cross the border to work in Israel. On a normal day, there would be about 250,000 workers every day crossing the border into Israel for work, construction, agriculture, and it would bring back good money for them. Working in Israel would actually be a good job because that's good money. So now it's all closed. So only 4 border crossings have been left open. They're considered lifeline crossings because they provide the lifeline, and they're open for humanitarian purposes only. Meaning patients who really have a humanitarian need, they do cross and they have a permit and they cross the border, and we drive them. We drive them. Of course, things are a bit different. They cannot guarantee they will be there on time. So typically, only when they cross, we drive towards them to pick them up. So things are delayed, but we're doing our best to help them receive the best treatment they can. Some of them actually, like little Mahmoud, who takes like 4 or 5 treatments a day, he remains in hospital during the week. He comes there on Sunday and he remains there. Maybe he returns for a short break on Tuesday and then goes back on Wednesday, because the transportation becomes much more complex, and crossing all the roadblocks and the checkpoint are much more difficult for them today. I mean, in those days. So when possible, they're hospitalized in Israel and just spend the night doing whatever they can.
Were any of the volunteers or people who work with Road to Recovery killed or injured or taken hostage?
Yes, unfortunately, Hamas was not selective, and a relatively large number of volunteers lived in the kibbutzim, in the communities along the Gaza border, which were raided on October 7th. So 4 of our volunteers have been abducted to Gaza. 3 were killed, and family members of 3 other volunteers have also were killed. And if you take those numbers out of the 1,200 volunteers and compare that to the overall death toll that the Israeli population has suffered, we have suffered as an organization much more than our share of the population.
Wasn't Lipschitz one of your folks who was released last week?
Oded and Yocheved Lipschitz were an old couple. They're both about 83, 84 years old. They were both kidnapped, and they were both active volunteers. And
the husband's still captive, right?
Yocheved was released. If you remember, on the second, 2 elderly Israeli women were
but not her husband.
Her husband is still held captive, and she hasn't seen him since they were brought into Gaza. They were separated. He was injured. I don't know how seriously, but he was injured, bleeding a bit, and she was also hurt to an extent. You know, she received some probably a broken rib or something, but she was transported there on a scooter.
Yeah, is she the one that she was saying that they were hitting her? They were on the motorbike.
She was the one. Yeah.
So what is this all doing to the atmosphere in Israel toward Palestinian citizens of Israel and also the West Bank versus Gaza? Are you seeing any delineation between any of them as far as their attitudes or as far as Israelis towards them? What's happening?
Unfortunately, you know, in such times, the extreme goes to the further extreme typically. Whether you're right-wing extremist or you're left-wing extremist, you go further to the extreme. And there are voices in Israel which now say we should flatten Gaza and wipe it out and rebuild it from scratch as the Israeli country. So I just asked them, okay, we've flattened Gaza. What are we going to do with the 2 million Palestinians who live there at the moment? They're not going to just appear. It's not going to happen. They are there. No one wants them. No one will take them. A few thousand may find refuge or asylum somewhere else, but 2 million people, they're there. If you want it or not, they're there to stay. So assuming we are able to eradicate Hamas, we are still, let's call it stuck or whatever you want to say, we are still left with 2 million Palestinians who need a place to live, who need something to work and, you know, just live their life. And I'm not saying it's supposed to be Israel's responsibility to rebuild Gaza and to find work for them, but we should at least allow, let's call it the world, to support and offer aid in order to rebuild Gaza and hopefully turn it into a peaceful country rather than it becoming ruled by another extremist Islamic dictator.
So there's so many people who went immediately to volunteer for the army or were drafted. What happens with their jobs? How is there any way to fill them?
So keep in mind, about almost 500,000 people were drafted to the military, to reserve. It's not an issue of volunteering; they were drafted. I mean, you have to.
Well, I mean, what I meant by that is there are so many people that I hear who didn't have to go but volunteered.
Yeah, well, but those who volunteer typically volunteer before. I mean, they were volunteer in Israel. There is a mandatory reserve service on 45, and if you want to serve beyond 45, you have to volunteer for the additional years. So some people are serving until 70 plus.
Yeah,
not as infantry troops, but as drivers or whatever. Now, if it's a truck driver, they drive tanks around or whatever it is. They transport things. They do all sorts of work. Beyond that, because of the vast number of people drafted to the military, there is shortage of working hands. So supermarkets are short-staffed. Agriculture is short-staffed. It's the picking season. All the fruit and vegetables now need to be picked now because they rot on the trees. So many people volunteer to help farmers. They just go and offer themselves for a day of work.
Yeah.
My wife went to pick cucumbers last Monday, and I volunteer for guard duty at the gate, and volunteer for all sorts of things. Actually, people volunteer not only in agriculture, they also volunteer in providing civil services. People, like sending medical supply, sending ceramic vests to soldiers, to reserve soldiers. And the fact being is that our government is, to be honest, quite defunct. The government offices were busy with everything except for running country in the past 9 months, busy with trying to turn Israel into dictatorship. And while doing so, they basically all sorts of services went south. And currently, the government is simply non-functional. The only office that does function is the Ministry of Health. Ministry of Education cannot really cope with the situation. Plenty of children are displaced, because their homes are no longer, either they don't have a home or their homes are being bombarded, so they were displaced, and you have to school them. The Ministry of Education does not have a solution for that. The Ministry of Agriculture does not care about farmers, and I can go on and on. Foreign Ministry, they're busy with shows, with the yellow Magen David at the UN. I mean, it's just impossible to think. If it wasn't for civilian volunteering group that actually do the work that the government should have done, Israel would have probably collapsed 3 weeks ago.
Wow.
But in the end, this is the situation, But at tough times, we all come together and we all turn around and we do the needful and we keep the country running. And the sentiment is, when this is all over, we will have another Israel, another government in Israel that looks our needs and not the needs of fanatic settlers or the ultra-Orthodox groups, which are only know to take but haven't heard about the word give.
I wanted to end on a happy note, and actually, I know of some. As we know, there are thousands of displaced Israelis who have had to move from their homes to get away from the bombings and other terrorist dangers in the north, and those who are near Gaza. And you belong to some choirs, and you've been giving pro bono concerts to give them a bit of relief from the reality of being away from home. And I've got a picture of the Megiddo choir singing at their pro bono concert for displaced Israeli families in Ramat HaShofet.
On our previous interview, I told you that I had the acquaintance with Maestro Zubin Mehta.
Yeah.
A younger baritone singing in the Israel Kibbutz choir. I sang under his baton, but there again, we had a chance to perform some pro bono concerts for the displaced people.
Yeah,
trying to cheer their spirit up.
That's so great, and I'm telling you, I will try to get through this without crying. But
another ensemble, a smaller ensemble, but yes, that's also there. We performed that for the displaced people from Kibbutz Yad Mordechai. And Yad Mordechai is it's named after Mordechai Nilevich from the Warsaw Ghetto, and it's located right at the Erez border crossing with Gaza, and it suffered quite a bit and has been evacuated. And they're staying in a hotel in Hadera, and that's where we gave them a short concert, and then we did a sing along, trying to cheer their spirits up. about, families, whole families living in a hotel room for by now almost a month, and as welcoming as a hotel can be, it's still away from home, and you cannot really live in a hotel for, right?
There's a vast difference when you choose to go to a hotel as opposed to you have to go to a hotel to escape being killed. Really.
Exactly, yes. In my kibbutz, in my community, we were hosting 80 displaced people. In the hotel, there are, I think, about 350 members of the kibbutz. It's a whole community. Think about a whole community, a whole neighborhood.
I hear you. Well,
and you go to the main hall, and one corner is clothes, secondhand clothes, which have been donated. So just packs of clothes, just come and take whatever you want. Another corner, there are toys which are donated, like tricycles and like board games and stuff,
toys,
just for the children.
Yeah,
and we're trying to give a concert, but keep in mind, it's a big hall, and children are screaming in the back. It was a challenge, but we're doing the right thing.
It's kind of like speaking during a dinner engagement. With all the clanking and the talking, but it is what it is.
I can just share one more thing. Sure. I've already been in two such concerts, and we were willing and able to do more. The point is that the displaced people actually are, I would say, swamped with offers.
Wonderful.
So it's difficult to get a spot to perform.
Okay, all right.
So
good for them, because they've got enough.
I'm happy it is this way and not the other way around.
Absolutely, and unfortunately, they keep saying it's going to last a long time. So
yes, it might take a while.
So
and hopefully, the abductees, including my two distant cousins, will be back home. Don't forget, 30 children under 15 are being held captive.
Ugh.
Some of them orphans. Some of them don't even know that they're orphans.
Ugh. Well, I want to thank you so much for your time today. It was really informative, really important for people to know we're all people, and what does it feel to be in these first days of war. I want to reiterate that killing anyone to me is anathema, and it's horrible, but I do understand where Israel's coming from, given the horrific slaughter of their citizens, and also the fact that Hamas uses their people as human shields and forces them to stay.
Even some of my own family members asked me, how can you help them now after what they've done? How can you help them? I said, who is them? Them is, there is the them, which is the Hamas activists, which are hidden underground. There are the them, which are the Gazans, which did nothing wrong, and they were displaced and they live in refugee camps, and thousands of them are being killed. And there are them, which are the patients. And I say, no child chooses to be born.
Yeah.
No child chooses his or her parents. No child chooses his or her parents' religion or where they're born. They're just born. They're children. I don't think that things are that hatred and religious fanaticism is genetic.
Yeah.
It's absorbed.
It's taught.
Yes. So I said they're innocent children. Most of them don't probably wouldn't even live long because of their ailments. But at least they have a chance to try and recover, and we were there to help them. And really, it wasn't their choice to be sick.
Obviously.
And it's our obligation as humans to help them because they are sick, not because they're Palestinians, because they are sick children.
Of course.
Who need help.
Amen. So, I mean, really, the world is really
Mishuge. That's the word, mishuge, right?
Yeah, I hesitated because everything I thought of I can't say. But
mishuge in Hebrew.
Yeah, mishuge. I know. It's fine. It's fine. Trust me, the words I came up with were worse than that. With the anti-Semitism and the kids not being safe on college campuses. And I hope we'll soon hear from more friends that support the right of Jews to live safely, even in the United States. But that's a whole other story. Thanks again, and hopefully may you live in peace, shalom, and salam.